Hey everybody, in this video I'm going to be talking about Stephen King's 2015 collection, The Bazaar of Bad Dreams. I will be reviewing and ranking every story contained therein and then giving an overall score at the end of the video. So stick with me, we've got a lot of good content to get through and I'll be right back. So The Bazaar of Bad Dreams is really a generous collection. It has 20 pieces included. It's not a doorstop like Nightmares and Dreamscapes, which just seems to go on and on and on. The pieces are short and kind of propulsive, and the collection moves ahead pretty quickly. It's also a pretty eclectic collection with lots of different formats and styles of stories that really show the breadth of Stephen King's skills as a writer. Certain themes like the afterlife, morality, mortality, the idea of free will come up over and over and certainly seem to express Stephen King's inner thoughts and concerns at that point in his life. There's great ideas throughout the entire collection. The stories really speak of real inspiration. It doesn't feel like Stephen King is just going through the motions like he does in some of his pieces and even some of his novels. Every piece in The Bazaar of Bad Dreams seems to be full of the spark of some kind of true and unique inspiration. Overall, I find it to be one of Stephen King's best short fiction collections. And I also always enjoy reading the author's notes, and I really like how in Bazaar of Bad Dreams, the notes are in the form of an introduction that comes before each piece. I really like that. Stephen King, he doesn't give away anything, there's no spoilers, but he does kind of give a little background and context and set the stage for each story right before it happens, which I really like. If the author's notes are there, they're usually like bunched together at the end. And so you read through all the stories and then you read all the author's notes at once and you kind of have to go back and kind of cross-reference. In this collection, they're just right there, which it's a small thing, but I really appreciated it. So notes on my ratings. My rating scale is incredibly subjective. It's totally personal. I just made it up. But as I go through, I do assign ratings to each story. And basically, I have a rating scale from 1 to 10. And anything from like a 0 to 4 just absolutely bombs. I just never get into it. I'm left with a sense of like, why does that even exist? And spoiler alert, there are no 0 to 4s in The Bazaar of Bad Dreams. A 5 or 6 is a story that just never quite gels or comes together. It's usually kind of far-fetched and ridiculous, and Stephen King just somehow doesn't stick the landing. A 7 or 8 is a story that's entertaining and well-written, but just doesn't quite come together and make an emotional impact that lingers in the mind. A 9 to me is a story that's just brilliantly constructed, but doesn't have that additional like emotional weight and resonance. So an example of this would be, I think, The Ledge from Night Shift, where the guy is forced to go out on the ledge of a skyscraper and kind of walk around the building. It's a brilliant, brilliant concept, and it's like airtight the way it's put together, but you don't really end up getting to know much about the characters or care much about the characters. That would have put it at a 10, but instead, The Ledge to me was a 9. And a 10 is everything that a 9 is. It's brilliantly conceived, brilliantly constructed, and it also packs that emotional punch that really helps the story achieve another level and linger in the memory. So the collection starts with Mile 81, which initially appeared as an ebook in 2011. According to Stephen King's notes, this is an old story that was originally conceived of in college, but he didn't write until the era of the collection. There's explicit references to Christine, both in Stephen King's notes and like really obviously in the story itself, also shades of From a Buick 8. It is scary and it's foreboding, and it makes a humorous commentary on the fact that adults just have to see for themselves. Whereas children have a tendency to believe more easily, adults are like, no, there must be a logical explanation for this. And so time after time after time, the adults, I don't know, I really got a kick out of it. It was scary and foreboding, but also kind of funny. It's like, no, don't do it. Don't go in there. Don't touch the car. But of course, time after time again, they do. And Silly adults, they'll just never learn. Anyway, My Lady One gets the book off to a great start. I gave it a 9 out of 10. Next up is Premium Harmony, which first appeared in the November 9th, 2009 issue of The New Yorker. SK said in his notes that he had been reading a ton of Raymond Carver at the time of the writing of this piece, and indeed it comes across as like heavily Raymond Carver inspired, or an homage to that author. It rolls along in the best Raymond Carver style and then takes an abrupt and shocking turn that leads to a satisfying conclusion. Overall, I give it 8 out of 10. Next up is Batman and Robin Have an Altercation, which is from the September 2012 issue of Harper's Magazine. So this one is another one. It just kind of rolls along, slice of life, and it's about an elderly father and his adult son, and they're just trying to go out to eat and have a nice lunch. And, Stephen King builds this world in miniature, which he's so adept at. And then at the end, there's yet another abrupt and kind of jarring, but like really shocking and satisfying twist and turn of events at the end of the story that I really liked. And I give Batman and Robin 8 out of 10. Next up is The Dune, which was first published in the fall 2011 issue of Granta. This one has a really engrossing concept, and it's another story about the mysteries around death and dying. It has a fantastic surprise ending. I really liked this story. I give it a 9 out of 10. Next up is Bad Little Kid, which has one of the best titles of any Stephen King story, Bad Little Kid, which had been previously unpublished in English. This one has kind of a slight but an amusing general concept, which in the best Stephen King tradition is rendered heavier and more impactful and more powerful than it probably should have been, just through the sheer virtue of Stephen King's writing ability. The descriptions of the kid are hilarious, but of course, as the story goes on, the kid becomes more and more sinister as he continues to reappear as a portent of evil and unfortunate things to come. The interesting sort of wraparound story, the idea of the death row confession, really draws you in despite the kind of outrageous and ridiculous premise of the story itself. The story to me is marred by an exceedingly obvious ending. Like you know where it's going before it gets there, and then it goes right where you think it's going to go. I think it would have been better if it had been left a little bit more open-ended or ambiguous, if the attorney had been kind of left wondering and haunted by the story that was told. Otherwise, it's a really tight story. I give it an 8 out of 10. Next up is A Death from the March 9th, 2015 issue of The New Yorker. This one's really interesting because it very intentionally uses a completely different voice than your typical Stephen King story. The dry and crackly Western setting and language does take a bit to get into, to get used to, but it does end up being very effective in the end. This one has a lot to say about truth and subjectivity. It has a lot of interesting commentary on just that idea of what we believe and why we believe it. And it has a fantastic about face at the end that really lingers in the memory and packs a punch. I give A Death 9 out of 10. Next up is The Bone Church, which first appeared in the November 2009 issue of Playboy. This is in the form of a creepy free verse poem that apparently Stephen King wrote and then lost and recreated from memory. And Stephen King has published some poems in various collections over the years, and for my money, The Bone Church is by far the best of all the poems from any Stephen King collection. It's about a group who goes on this nightmare expedition to find a treasure in a deep jungle, and their greed and their avarice kind of pushes them forward despite all of the danger and all of the threats that are around them, ultimately to their demise. It has some very vivid images, and the language is used beautifully, and I really liked that. Overall, I give The Bone Church a 7 out of 10. Next up is Morality, which originally appeared in the July 2009 issue of Esquire magazine. This is a stone-cold Stephen King classic story, very impactful. It's one of the best in the collection and one of the best overall Stephen King stories. It's a story about crime, but mostly it's a story about guilt and the insidious ramifications of it. Stephen King really takes the time to explore the lead up to the act, and then the fallout, what comes after the act in every facet. It doesn't seem like, even though it's a short story, or a short piece, it doesn't seem like he ever skimps on the details. It's as long as it needs to be. It's chilling and tense and gripping throughout. It makes you emotionally like care about the characters. It's brilliantly constructed, and it has a really, really satisfying ending. Like I said, stone cold classic story. I give it a 10 out of 10, the first from this collection. Next up is Afterlife, which first appeared in the June 2013 issue of Tin House. This is another story about the afterlife. Well written, interesting concept. I did appreciate that it mentions, like, this comes up a lot. A lot of stories, a lot of novels mention Hemingford Home, Nebraska, which is, of course, to fans of The Stand, the hometown of Mother Abigail. This one takes a humorous view of the afterlife and sort of views the afterlife as this bureaucratic hamster wheel. I really appreciated that approach and that perspective. It's relatable in that the main character chooses over and over to try again, just sure that this time he'll do something different, he'll do something better, and it'll come to a different end. He tries over and over again, despite being told explicitly that no matter what he does, it doesn't make any difference. He always ends up back where he started. I found that to be very, very human indeed. I really liked that. I give Afterlife an 8 out of 10. Next up is U-R, which was originally published as an ebook in 2009. So 2009 was like the birth, the early years of the Amazon Kindle, and the idea of like ebooks that you could buy and download and just read on the device. So it basically started out almost like a sales pitch for the Amazon Kindle. Stephen King turns into something completely different, thought-provoking, interesting, deep, and really uses the Kindle as not just like product placement, but as a truly integral device to the story. It has a fantastic concept that spurs the imagination. I kept thinking, what would I do? What would I do? Where would I go? What would I read about? What would I want to know and find out if I was in the same position? Some of the concepts in were revisited in a much deeper way in the novel 11/22/63. Has some really interesting Dark Tower connections. The low men in yellow coats make an appearance in a very, very surprising way, which completely changed my entire thought process about the Dark Tower series itself. And the idea of and the that are available through this special pink Kindle is kind of helpful in illustrating in a different way the concept of the tower and different levels of the Dark Tower. This one was way more than the sum of its parts. It lingered in the memory. It was lots of fun. It was thought-provoking. I absolutely loved it, and I give a 10 out of 10. Next up is Herman Wouk is Still Alive, which originally appeared in the May 2011 issue of The Atlantic. This is the one story that I still remembered after my first read-through of the collection when it was first published, but it hit totally different on reread. I was looking forward to it, and it just kind of left me flat this time. It has a compelling concept, albeit pretty depressing, of two women, friends, and their brood of all these children, and they have like meager lottery winnings. One of them won a small amount of money off a scratcher or something, and so they're going to go on this really kind of depressing vacation. It doesn't amount to much, but they're going to do it. They're going to live it up, and kind of then, go back to their boring, depressing lives after it's all over. So in the course of kind of talking about the vacation, planning it out, thinking about what comes next, the two women kind of come, I think, listening to it, they just kind of come to this unspoken agreement that not only they, but all their children would be better off dead, because they don't really have a lot of hope, a lot of prospects for the future. And so they just kind of decide by unspoken mutual consent to end it all. And it really strikes a false chord to me, the idea that these two women would be self-reflective enough to think about this in that way and come to that conclusion, but then also to just sort of give up. It seems strange to me. And even worse, which I totally didn't get the last time around, even worse, it's really condescending. To think that these two women in their particular situation with all their children would realize or come to the conclusion between themselves that they would all all be better off dead is actually pretty brutal and really tone deaf. It's almost like Stephen King is saying that people like this are better off dead. And there's a subplot with these two old writers, and I mean, it hasn't been that long since I revisited the story, and that's pretty much all I remember about them. Two old writers, and they're having a picnic. That subplot barely registers. The story is well written, as always, but it's jarring from a moral and philosophical standpoint. I didn't care for this one. It was kind of upsetting and jangly, and I don't know. I'd be curious to know what you think about this one, but I gave it a 5 out of 10 for craft and writing alone.
And now a word about our sponsor.
For over 20 years, StephenKingCollector.com has been the internet's go-to source for all things Stephen King. From breaking news and real-time sales updates from around the internet, to forums where you can connect with like-minded collectors, to information about first editions as well as highly sought-after and rare limited editions, StephenKingCollector.com has it all. Additionally, the collector sells custom slipcases to protect your most valuable and cherished treasures. The collector now offers book sales directly through the website and an all-around upgraded and improved payment system. With improvements and updates happening on a regular basis, there's always something new to see and experience at StephenKingCollector.com. The link to the site is in the description for this video. You should go check it out. You'll be glad you did. Next up is Under the Weather, which first appeared in the paperback edition of Full Dark, No Stars from 2011. This is yet another story about the afterlife. It has a creepy attention to detail and is a really compelling depiction of the advertising world, which Stephen King has touched on at various times in his career. It has lots of heart-tugging descriptions of the main character in his life in happier times. These like really visceral depictions of what he has lost. It is pretty evident early on what's going on in the story, which I think robs it of some of its energy, unfortunately. It was another, fine, well-written, interesting idea. It just didn't quite rise to the same level of classic as some of the others, so I give it a 7 out of 10. Next up is Blockade Billy, which first received its own standalone publication in 2010 from Cemetery Dance. Now, I'm not a big baseball fan, I'll say that right up front, but I know enough about the mechanics of the game to have been easily immersed into the world of the story. However, I thought that someone who knows nothing about baseball may have a harder time getting drawn into the story and may have a less positive experience than I did. The story is incredibly compelling, entertaining, and mysterious. Billy is like the Rain Man of baseball. He's a fascinating, wonderful character. In the audiobook, the audio performance is by the actor Craig Wasson, and he just gives a fantastic rendition, which undoubtedly adds something to the overall experience. I highly recommend the audiobook if you haven't checked it out. It also has a really, really satisfying conclusion. It's almost breathlessly well crafted. Like the inspiration for this one is just oozing through every word on every page. You can tell Stephen King was having a great time with this one. It's full of inspiration, it's well crafted, it's well conceived, it's emotionally engaging. I give it another perfect 10 out of 10. Blockade Billy is fantastic. Next up is Mr. Yummy, which was previously unpublished. There's another reference to Hemingford Home, which was the home of Mother Abigail from The Stand. It's another story about death and dying. It's a low-key story set in the fairly unusual for Stephen King setting of a fancy nursing home or an assisted living facility, to put maybe a slightly nicer spin on it. To me, it was a compelling look into the gay culture of the 1980s, although people with more familiarity and experience with that may find that it rings false to them. I found that it was compelling and interesting and thought-provoking from my limited frame of reference. This one has a really comforting idea around the end of life. It's soothing rather than horrifying. I did appreciate where the story was going. I appreciated what it said and what it did. To me, it was an 8 out of 10. It's a good story, well worth reading, nothing wrong with it. It just didn't rise to that highest level for me. Next up is Tommy, which first appeared in the March 2010 issue of Playboy. This is the other poem in the collection. It's kind of a piece with Hearts in Atlantis. It would have fit in really well in that collection, as it is, again, another recounting of Stephen King's experience during the Vietnam era. It's compelling and interesting with vivid images, just doesn't rise to a classic level for me, it doesn't super linger in the memory. I liked it. For a poem, I gave it a 6 out of 10. Next up is The Little Green God of Agony, which first appeared in the 2011 collection, A Book of Horrors. This one, of all the pieces in the collection, this is probably the most like stereotypical classic horror story of them all. It has an intriguing concept. It's, as always, it's well written, it's thought provoking. The like super freak out horror climax was really entertaining, but the ending I thought was pretty obvious. I give The Little Green God of Agony a 7 out of 10. Next up is That Bus is Another World, which first appeared in the August 2014 issue of Esquire. This one has an interesting concept and an unusual setting, which I really enjoyed. This one was inspired by Stephen King, stuck in traffic in Paris on his way to a speaking engagement, looking out his window and making brief eye contact with a woman on a bus. That was like the kernel of inspiration that led to this story. It's a compelling, intense story about the real world stress related to travel. So like it already is going someplace that you think like, yeah, this is tense, this is stressful, and it's completely relatable. And then it throws in this like sudden, intense, and shocking twist. Comes out of nowhere, and it's really, really scary. And then the main character like goes through this crisis of conscience in miniature as he's getting, the traffic is moving, he's getting on toward his appointment, which is like a really important appointment. If the presentation he does goes well, it could like totally change his whole life. And the way that he rationalizes away his feelings and what he saw or didn't see, tries to talk himself out of believing he saw what he thought he saw, it's really relatable. It's really well done. It's another really well-written story with an interesting concept. I give this one an 8 out of 10. Next up is Obits, which was previously unpublished. It was an interesting Easter egg connection to Blockade Billy, and one of the characters kills himself by swallowing a bar of soap, which is something that also happens in Blockade Billy. So that like really, really painful and like scary and just like that plot element in one story being reused in another story like really popped out at me, not in a bad way, but just sort of like in a call out throwback kind of way. It has an interesting concept that reminded me of another piece from the collection, and it has an interesting sort of tabloid setting, which I don't remember. Stephen King has done plenty of like newspaper reporters, but I don't remember him ever setting a story in like an actual tabloid rag, the kind of which Stephen King himself must have had plenty of negative experiences with over the course of his life. This one has a lot to say about addiction and power in a really unique way to say it, and it has a really effective twist ending. I found this one engaging and thought-provoking throughout, and it lingered in the memory afterward. It was still thought-provoking. I give Obits a 9 out of 10. Next to last, we have Drunken Fireworks, which first appeared in a standalone audiobook in 2015. This one is the most prototypically main story in the whole collection. It is like, I don't know, slipping on a comfortable old pair of shoes to listen to or read a Stephen King story set in Maine, where it's just like, man, this is his bread and butter, and Drunken Fireworks is definitely one of those. The characters, as in all such stories set in Maine, seem very familiar and very endearing to Stephen King. This was a very amusing story, both in the general concept and in the execution. Unlike most of the stories in this collection, I literally had laugh out loud moments in Drunken Fireworks. I really got a kick out of it. I really enjoyed it. I love as the mother and son are getting in this escalating fireworks battle with the rich family across the lake, and the trumpet that the son of the man across the lake blows, wah, wah. Every time the wah, wah in the audiobook, I just laughed and laughed. It was really, really amusing, and I could hear it. And then like I could feel the anger and the frustration. Like it would just get under my skin this like trumpet blast that sounds like an elephant farting. This like na 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 trumpet blast, and I really got a kick out of that. And it has a really satisfying resolution. I found this one to be a very well-written piece with an interesting concept, well put together, and a satisfying conclusion. I gave Drunken Fireworks a 9 out of 10. And then we end the 20th piece is Summer Thunder, which first appeared in the 2013 collection Turn Down the Lights. This one is an intriguing post-apocalyptic story, so still has a lot to do with death and dying, which seems to be a recurring theme through this whole collection. The beautiful, like gorgeous, like almost painfully gorgeous, idyllic setting is a brilliant counterpoint to like the deep hopelessness and despair coursing through the heart of the story. The beauty of the countryside and the surroundings makes it seem more hopeful than it really is, which only increases the emotional weight, the emotional punch that the story packs. It's another fine story, and it makes a great ending to the collection, but to me, it just doesn't rise to the level of a classic. I give Summer Thunder an 8 out of 10. So, wrapping up, the Bazaar of Bad Dreams is another fine, eclectic collection. It has some real late period Stephen King classics, and with the exception of one story, everything in it across the board is strong and easily recommended. If you've not picked up the Bazaar of Bad Dreams, you could do a lot worse. I highly recommend that you check it out. There are 2 poems in the collection, and they are the 2 best poems that Stephen King has included in any collection. So those are also easy recommendations, even if, like me, you're not a huge fan of poetry. So comparing the Bazaar of Bad Dreams to the previous collection, Just After Sunset, and also the most recent collection, You Like It Darker, the Bazaar of Bad Dreams seems to have a more easy, free-flowing feel of inspiration to it. Just After Sunset was kind of like Stephen King had edited a collection of short fiction and then just kind of decided that he should start writing short stories again. It's not bad. There's some great work in that collection as well, but it just doesn't have the same kind of free-flowing inspiration and momentum of the pieces of the Bazaar in the Bazaar of Bad Dreams. And the same kind of goes for You Like It Darker. That collection, which is very, very recent, it does have a couple of absolute classic pieces in it, but overall, the inspiration, this is totally subjective. It may be complete BS. You may totally disagree with me, but the inspiration, it just isn't there in the same way as in Bazaar of Bad Dreams. Anyway, there are 20 pieces in the collection, which makes it pretty easy from a math standpoint. And overall, it gets 163 out of 200, which is an overall average score of 81.5, which is pretty solid. It's not the highest scoring collection, but it's definitely not the lowest scoring collection. You could do a heck of a lot worse. If you've not picked up the Bazaar of Bad Dreams, you may as well. It's pretty dang good. If you like Stephen King short fiction like I do, I think there's a lot to recommend this one. So as always, let me know in the comments what you thought of the Bazaar of Bad Dreams. Do you agree with my scores? Do you think that the collection is overrated, underrated? Let me know all the things. Thanks as always to channel sponsor Thomas over at skcollector.com. Thanks to channel member N. Dean for your ongoing support, and thanks to all of you for watching the videos, for supporting the channel, for supporting me, for your comments, for your questions. If you ever have a more in-depth question, you want to send pictures of something you're thinking of picking up or that you have picked up, feel free to email me at skfirsteditions@gmail.com. I will get back in touch with you as soon as I can. But for now, wherever you are in the world, I hope you take care of yourselves, and I will talk to you later. Bye.